Welcome to Policing TV, where I'm in Wokingham in Berkshire and joined by Sam Smith, by Daisy and by Albion. Thank you all of you for joining Policing TV here in Wokingham. Sam, we're going to start with you, explaining what it is that's the policing connection here in filming in Wokingham.
Yep.
And talking about initially the green ribbon policing. So tell us about that.
Yep. So yeah, I'm a ex-police officer, and through my own journey in policing, fortunately got affected by the high level of trauma in policing, and that led me to create the Green Ribbon Policing campaign to try and improve, advocate and develop mental health support in policing to better the lives of our police officers, but also better the life of the public in the way of getting a better policing service.
So very much Green Ribbon Policing, a campaigning organisation,
Yeah.
looking to make positive improvements to the way that police officers suffering from some form of mental health challenge,
Yeah.
the support that they provide and the protection that they have.
Yeah.
How much success do you feel you've had so far in that campaign, which I think started back in 2020?
Yeah, so it was probably, so it was late 2019 when I left policing. I think it has been very successful. When I started, I didn't really know what it was going to be. Originally, it was almost just a petition to say, look, we need more awareness in training for police officers. So when you start off in policing, you need to be a bit more aware of the risks to your life from trauma and what that can do to you, and the heightened risk as a police officer. It kind of grew to bigger than that, to be an actual real voice of understanding the need for change. I've been quite influential through the years. I'm a part of conversations with the current Covenant. I've been in conversations with various different leaders, whether that be of Oscar Kilo, the Wellbeing Programme. I'm very known within the mental health policing world, and I've been a great advocate and voice to actually those suffering. So I have a big following of officers currently still serving who struggle with the likes of PTSD and other mental health related disorders, and actually just giving them that hope. I know that's what a few of the people have said. It's just that hope and that voice that we will get change, and we will learn that looking after the police officers is the key to getting a better police force and actually getting policing to a point where we can really be proud again.
So there is a particular reason, Daisy, for you and Albion also being involved in this film, in that it's not just about the police officer, it's also about the police officer's family and loved ones, because of course they are also affected by the trauma that police officers themselves are going through. We'll come back to Sam in a moment or two to talk about the specifics in his policing career. But how did it feel for you seeing the impact that policing had on Sam when he came back from work?
It was a challenging time when Sam joined the police.
I'm sure you're putting it mildly there, but carry on.
When he joined the police, we were so proud of him, and he was very excited. This was what he wanted to do with his life. He wanted to help the public. When he came home and we could see that he was struggling, you're not sure what to do, and you don't know who to reach out to. And I think it's very important that forces are aware of that, that they need to look after their officers, but they also need to support the family members in knowing what to do to support their officers as well, because they're not just men in uniform, more men and women in uniform, they're family members, and we care very much about them.
Now, you have specific skills and knowledge that are relevant into this. We'll come back to you again if we may, Daisy, but I'm going to go to Sam now. Just to tell us a little about the journey from your joining as a police officer through to the point that you resigned from the police.
It was funny, I was going through old emails and stuff the other day, and I found the email which told me I'd got into the police force I got into, and I remember where I was at and how excited, the feeling of joy. There's several moments in my life that I can remember of being really happy, obviously Albion, but also getting my driving licence and joining the police, the feeling was so intense. I threw my life into it. It became part of me. When you get a job as a police officer, it isn't just a job, it is a lifestyle, it is a life, and actually your family have to very quickly adapt to that. You know, you're gone all the time, you're never at family events. I think we were talking the other day, we realised there was a lot of events I was never at, and it wasn't actually because I didn't want to be there, or I wasn't prepared to socialise at that time. It was very much because I was never around, and people just accepted that. I threw myself into it so much, it absorbed my life, and I didn't ever see where things were going wrong. I didn't see the breaking point where I was no longer the Sam Daisy once knew, and I'd become completely socially, I guess, isolated. I was not going out. If I wasn't at work, I was staying inside our very small accommodation with the curtains shut and hiding myself from the world. I became incredibly darkened, if you like. My life became very dark, and when I think back to a time when I was very ill, I just see a darkness. And Daisy, with a background in psychology, she started to notice things that I refused to accept, and she, kind of behind my back, actually started to look up PTSD and the links between PTSD and police officers. She'd bought a book on it and all sorts. I had no idea. And I often say that most people don't have a Daisy, though. Most people's partners aren't psychologists or psychology degree holders. So actually, she was able to, I guess, intervene. And it doesn't mean that was easy. There's been a long battle of me not accepting it for a long time. But if that didn't happen, I don't know where I'd be today, even if I would even be here today. So actually, not everyone has a Daisy. Not everyone's going to have full psychology understanding of the trauma relating to police officers and how that affects their mental health. And I really think that needs to be understood, that I'm lucky I'm still here, able to voice, able to champion change, but so many aren't.
So Daisy, you have that professional knowledge, that mental health knowledge. Tell us about what you saw in Sam as he was going through that, and what it led you to conclude, and what, I think I'm right in saying, you nudged or persuaded him to do as a result of that.
Yeah, so at the start, we noticed that he was becoming very withdrawn. He wasn't going out to meet his friends anymore. He wasn't going to the gym, and his life very much revolved around staying indoors at home. At first we thought perhaps it's just the shift work. It takes its toll, you get quite tired, but it went on for a lot longer than that, and he wasn't very happy. I also noticed he was talking in his sleep, and I think that was a real sign that there was something on his mind, based off of what he was saying in his sleep.
And so what did you encourage him to do, or how did you initially and then latterly help him through that?
So I encouraged him to speak to his GP and to speak to family and to get back in touch with friends again. As Sam mentioned, I did purchase a book as well, and it was a book that was recommended to me by another police officer that I knew, who said he had gone through a difficult time, and it helps you understand what you're going through. And I did try leaving it out for Sam to read. So I was trying to leave little clues and things there to try and open that conversation, because from a professional perspective, it's very different when you approach someone about their mental health. When it's a loved one or a family member, it's completely different, and you have to approach it in a very different way.
So Sam, from your perspective, the nudges that Daisy was giving you eventually led you to seek further help.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I agreed eventually to seek help, as almost as like it will shut her up. And I mean that in the nicest of ways, but I just felt like, get off my case. All police officers are like this, leave me alone. And we were fighting over it, arguing about it all the time. I was saying, I'm fine, this is normal, I'm busy, I'm a police officer, I have to do shift work, you can't expect me to be everywhere. I didn't see how it was affecting our lives, I just couldn't see it. And for ages I was in denial. I was kind of part of what the Snow's problem is. I had a completely in denial attitude about mental health and policing. I saw it as people think you're weak, and that is often the misconception, and I just would not accept that I had a problem. The reason I eventually agreed to go to the doctors and seek help is because I've found we're at tipping point, breaking point of basically maybe just leaving each other and going our separate ways. And I thought, I'll just do that. I'll go to the doctors, they'll say I'm fine. But actually what happened is I went to the GP. They had, for what I remember, didn't say much to me. I felt that conversation was very brief considering the outcome, and the outcome was, we're signing you off for a month. You're a hair width away from having a breakdown, and we're very concerned about what policing is doing to you at the moment and your health. And that, to me, my world imploded there, and that was the first day of the beginning of the future of me starting to accept. But it took a long time. So after that, it's been a long journey. My advocating, my openness to talk about this, it's taken years to really come out. Many people won't talk about it today, but I feel actually if I'm going to get change and advocate for change, I need to share my own story too.
So tell us next what you would encourage officers and potentially police staff going through, or recognising in what you too have described something about their own circumstances. So and then I'll come to Daisy, then I'll come back to you to set out what you are seeking in your campaign. Daisy, between those two, I'm going to come to you and just ask you a similar question from the partner's perspective. So, Sam, first, what would you encourage those who recognise signs in what you and Daisy have been saying in their own circumstances?
Firstly, I would educate yourself on what to look for. So, for example, as I said, I had nightmares, talked in my sleep, I said very disturbing things. I spoke about a lot of death and stuff in my sleep, which was quite disturbing for Daisy as well. But also the withdrawnness, the mood changes, the also lack of emotion. I became very cold, very unlovable, or very unloving, unlovable and unloving. I became almost like a shell of my person, like a shadow of my own personality. And I really think that when you go into policing, you'll concentrate on the physical assaults you might feel, and you get stabbed through vests, etc. But you need to be aware now that you're not working in a bakery or retail, you're not a student anymore. You are going to a job where you are 5 times more likely to develop illnesses such as PTSD, and you need to take that with the seriousness that it is. And actually, I'm not saying constantly worry about yourself, but take note when you've gone to a traumatic incident of what that may be doing to you. You can go to countless traumatic incidences and they may or may not affect you, but you've just got to be mindful that no one is safe from exposure to trauma. There's no sort of written thing that you're weak if you get PTSD. Anyone can get it. You see ex-SAS soldiers talk about it and what it's done to them, and it can affect anyone. And I really think we need to break down that idea that you're weak or you're not worthy. If you can get help earlier on, you will potentially keep your career.
So as best you can, get help early.
Yes.
From the partner's perspective, Daisy, what would you, if somebody watching this recognises the signs in their partner, what would you say as that partner that they might do?
They need to speak to them. Just be open and honest about what you're observing, and just remember not to take it personal. It is very difficult, and it can be a very upsetting time. But at the end of the day, that they're a police officer. They've gone through a lot of trauma themselves, and perhaps they don't recognise their own behaviours and the signs that they're showing. And of course, as early as you can, get involved with their friends and their colleagues. Get to know them. Their police family. At the end of the day, and so if you ever need help approaching them, or you're worried about them, then you've got that support network, someone else that understands what they might be going through, and they might know resources that you've never heard of that they can share with you.
Sam, in closing, what is your campaign now looking to achieve?
So Green Ribbon Policing, which has, as I said, influenced over the years, has been asking for a mandatory national standard in policing to create more consistent approach to how we protect our mental health in policing. So I've always said a 360 approach of when you start as a new police officer, you'll be educated on the risks that the job poses to you. Throughout your service, you'll have maintained support, whether that be the aftercare you received after going to traumatic incidences, or whether that be an assessment everyone undergoes every year to make sure they are psychologically fit to carry on policing in the role they are at that time, just like they do with physical well-being. And then the aftercare goes on to when you leave as well, that you don't get ejected from the police family, and that you've served and you've done your time, supporting your country in policing. So we should respect that and be offering support and extra help to those people when they are then found out to have psychological or physical injuries from their time. We're asking for potentially government legislation to support this, or at least for the police crime commissioners to understand the powers and the responsibilities they have in this area, because at the moment I don't think they realise that it's down to them to make the change. And if we don't get that change, we are going to continue to see a rollover of police officers, reduced retention, reduced experience, poorer policing, and obviously the even sadder effect is loss of lives, needless loss of lives, and in many ways, destruction of families, because people's families, if they don't die of, from suicide or something like that, their families have been pulled apart.
So a role for police and crime commissioners here in the UK, for those in charge of governance, for the forces themselves, for government in terms of legislation, and of course, as best they can, for the individuals to spot and for their loved ones and partners to spot in others those signs and act upon them.
Yeah.
So Sam Smith, Daisy and Albion, thank you so much for your time here in Wokingham. Some real food for thought in that for many different groups, and also particularly for those that are potentially subject to that trauma and indeed their loved ones. Thank you, all three of you, very much for your time.